Good morning, noon, and night, and welcome to Fake News. I'm your host. Today's story that we're going to be taking a look at is not so much a story, but a hypothesis. An idea that I have, because remember, this is real news with a budget. Let's take a look at kind of one thing, and that is, why have systems such as Linux, Windows, BSD, what's the difference between all these? Why is it that Windows and Mac, two really terrible operating systems, are popular, but yet Linux and others are not? So to be able to kind of understand this idea, we kind of have to look at one thing. From software developers' perspective, i.e. mine, it's really easy to make a switch, but the end user, it's not that easy. What do I mean by that? End users don't really care about the ins and outs of an operating system, about a new file system, half the neat stuff that's out there. All that they really seem to care about, the programs they use. So that's great. That's what I'm establishing. That's my thesis for this argumentary document. For people like me, it's easy to switch, kind of, as long as the programming environment is okay and we can make it do what we want. But for most people, it's very difficult. And this is kind of a barrier to entry for Linux, BSD, Haiku, the wonderful world of Temple OS, Plan 9, and programming exercises like JNode. So why get to the point? Wow, don't do that while driving. That's not really a good idea. The point is, it's the software. It's what you use, all right? Like, I can switch from Windows to Mac, or Mac to Windows, or PC, or whatever the people are calling it nowadays. I can be pretty much set. I can almost guarantee that Photoshop will work on Windows or Mac. If I want to switch to Linux and use Photoshop, it's going to be kind of difficult. I've been trained in Photoshop. I don't want to learn a whole new piece of software, i.e. GIMP. And I don't want to just waste my time trying to figure out this new, often clunky, interface. I just want to use what I know. I want to go to the files and the menus that I know. I've trained myself to do this. That's kind of the whole thing there, is that I want to be able to. People want to use the software that they've known to grow to love. And nobody wants to use a new piece of beta software that tries to do the same thing but can't do it as well. For Linux, the main barrier of entry was actually the lack of software because of the model that GNU and Linux took, which is good, because that allowed us to finally get halfway decent alternatives. I spent most of my time in college in art classes such as graphic design and photography using Inkscape and GIMP versus the Adobe suite. And I was able to get pretty much the same exact results, and nobody could tell. That was in 2015. So now about 4 or 5 years later, we have good software that's an alternative. But let's go ahead and take one more look at software and stuff like that. That's what kind of is a barrier to entry. A lot of enterprise applications are written in C# and Java, and a lot of user applications can be too. Now, Linux is breaking through because the free and open source stuff is starting to get good quality alternatives. Overall, they provide a good experience. There's a lot of people on the roads today. Look at all these vehicles. I don't know. Wow. Why hasn't Plan 9 took off? Because there needs to be backwards compatible software that has to be ported to this new system. It's got to be backwards compatible. I got to be able to open my DOS files because, oh, good heavens, just somehow some app developer can't update their code, or the app developer's dead, and I can't just pay someone like $50 to build me a newer version that's better quality. Seriously, come on. Businesses are cheap, all right? People are cheap. I think that's the only reason why Linux actually ever took off, is because it was free. Fake news. Wow, my eyes are hurting. Woo. But wait, you can write an emulation layer, right? No. Try emulating x86 on an ARM processor and just tell me how fast that works out for you and how quick and snappy it is, because it's snappier than it is on the real deal. It's not. It's painful. Anyway. So that's kind of like the little lowdown and the rundown of everything for you. As end users, we would prefer to have stuff be backwards compatible, to be able to use the file that we made 30 years ago without having to remake it all over again, and just load up my favorite photo editor and my favorite music editor, I want it to be able to work out of the box on Windows, Mac, Linux, BS. You see what I'm saying here, right? A lot of people don't like to relearn stuff. They don't like to have to go through and start from the ground up. Nobody does. You know, that's what defines progress, is that we don't rebuild the wheel, but we just build on top of the wheel. And that's kind of why Linux hasn't really taken off. And that's kind of been a problem. I hope you enjoyed this fake news element for today. See you next video. And, of course, as always, happy hacking.